As President Trump prepares to pick a SCOTUS nominee, panic continues from the Democrats. Violence once again hits the cities. And we look at the false gospel of black theology. My name is Sean Clinton, and this is the God of Freedom Show. This show is sponsored by Anchor, the easiest way to make a podcast. If you're looking to start a podcast, just simply go to the website or download the app, and you record the audio from your phone or computer, and then edit it from your phone and computer and post it. It's very simple, and it's also free. Check it out. Alrighty, guys. So I hope everyone is having themselves a great week. This will be a Saturday. I'm filming on a Friday, but this will be a Saturday when I post it. So I hope. We have a lot to get to today. So let's just jump right into it, right into the episode. So pretty much all week, the main focus of the news cycle has been the whole SCOTUS thing about who will be the next, who will be Trump's pick for the SCOTUS, who would get the robe, and yeah, it has been an absolutely insane week in terms of that news cycle because not really because of what Republicans are doing. Really, the Republicans and really Trump is doing a lot of great things. I mean, Trump, I think, has said maybe one stupid thing this week. Just one, thankfully. But other than that, I mean, that's really been overpowered by all kind of other good things been happening this week as well. I mean, President Trump, remember, he signed into executive order to get rid of the whole critical race theory from federal workplaces and the military, and hopefully that will entrench down into the schools as well. Well, but we'll see about that. But really, the main issue is coming from the Democrats, who are just, they've lost it pretty much. They have completely and utterly lost it by every measure. But before I get to that, here is basically kind of President Trump explaining how this whole process is going to be working for the SCOTUS pick, but how when he will pick the nominee and who will possibly be. But here's President Trump on that right here.
So I think we're going to start the process extremely soon, and we'll have a nominee very soon.
Senator Collins said she'd like to see the next president be the one to nominate a Supreme Court justice. What's your reaction?
Who said that?
Senator Collins, Susan
Well,
Collins.
I totally disagree with her. We have an obligation. We won, and we have an obligation as the winners to pick who we want. That's not the next president. Hopefully I'll be the next president. But we're here now. Right now we're here. And we have an obligation. I have a short list. I've had a short list for a while. We added a number of people onto the list, the previous list. We have about 45 altogether. I do indeed have a short list. I could see most likely it would be a woman. Yeah, I think I can say that. It would be a woman. I would, if somebody were to ask me now, I would say that a woman would be in first place. Yes. The choice of a woman, I would say, would certainly be appropriate. We're working with all of the Republican senators and working with Mitch McConnell, and we'll be making a decision. I would think before would be very good, but we'll be making a decision. I think the process can go very, very fast. I'll be making my choice soon, and when the choice is made, I'll be sending it over to Mitch and the Senate, and they will do what they have to do. I think the choice will be next week. Yes, I do. I do. Okay? So.
Okay, so basically what he's basically saying is that, when will his pick be, and it will be, remember, this video was posted on the 19th of September, so sometime last week. So basically his pick is going to happen Saturday, which is for me is tomorrow, about 5:00 p.m. So that'll be interesting to see. And I'm pretty sure they're going to do a whole little ceremony type deal like they did with Kavanaugh back in 2018 when President Trump picked him. So And as far as like who he would pick, he has a kind of he's down to a very short list of people who he would pick. And as he said in this video, that it would most likely be a woman. So that's down to, I think, 2 different picks. The one that's most likely to be picked, in my opinion, is Amy Coney Barrett. She is a terrific judge. She was confirmed into the Court of Appeals back in 2017. Remember, there was a whole kind of big deal because, she's Catholic and pro-life. And then Dianne Feinstein said to her face, the dogma lives loudly within you. So, given, she's a Catholic pro-life female, that was very interesting time. But now that she could be considered for the Supreme Court, that was going to be very, very interesting because she is Catholic and also pro-life and very originalist. And what originalist is basically when a judge is an originalist, that means they interpret the law or the Constitution as it was written during the time. So not just like putting in some weird little thing to what they think it means. Like, for example, big example is Roe versus Wade. The judges who made that decision all decided to point to the 14th Amendment and say, well, from the wording, it actually does, if we can interpret to mean that it protects abortion as well. Which is laughably insane. And people who actually amended the 14th Amendment when it was put forth would be appalled by that interpretation. The 14th Amendment says nothing about abortion and your right to kill your child. There's nothing in that. And I guess there's something about, right to privacy or something like that in the 14th Amendment. But again, that does not include killing your unborn child. That does not include it. And so, Roe versus Wade was a garbage decision decided by garbage justices. And thankfully, Amy Coney Barrett seems like someone who would actually really look to overturn that decision. And I hope it does happen because now we have a 6-3 kind of thing, or votes on the bench now, on the court. So that means there's a strong possibility that Roe versus Wade, if it comes up, could be overturned. Now, there's questions about, if that will even happen, because, Justice Roberts probably won't vote to overturn Roe v. Wade. Kavanaugh, he maybe. I do have kind of hope that he will make the right decision when it comes down to it. But we'll see if it ever comes up. But as far as, the other justices on the court, Thomas, Alito, I believe, and Gorsuch, I'm pretty sure they will look to overturn Roe v. Wade. And that's my opinion right there. But again, just like the panic coming from the Democrats over this is laughably insane. Laughably insane. Like, they're talking about tearing down the system because they don't get to pick who will be the new SCOTUS, new justice on the Supreme Court. So, to kind of start off with, here's some random leftist reaction to Ginsburg dying. And you got to kind of compare and contrast on how conservatives react to someone's death and how they react to it. So here's that video right here and how this leftist reacted to Ginsburg's death.
Fucking shit, you guys! I'm driving your car, but I just got a notification that Ruth Bader Ginsburg died! Fuck! Could this year get any fucking worse? Ruth, you just had to make it to 2021! Ah!
What a a delight right there. So, I apologize for the language right there. I should have given a warning before then. But still, that's just an insane, pathetic reaction right there to someone's death. And compare and contrast that to President Trump's reaction to Ginsburg's death. Like he was taken back by it and actually gave a kind of respectful kind of outline of her, what he thought of her and everything. So that was a really good moment for President Trump right there. But then now you compare and contrast to someone on the left right here. She's saying that all you have to do is make it to 2021. So yeah, I mean, someone just died of pancreatic cancer, and the first thing you worry about is that, oh my gosh, Trump gets to pick the new SCOTUS nominee. I'm freaking out. It is insane. And not only there was many people on the left freaking out by this, and like I said, there was many on the left saying that sorry, lost some train of thought there. So many on the left, like it was Reza Aslan, if that's his name, saying that we need to tear down the system, and many people echo that all over Twitter and everywhere. It is patently insane as how they're reacting to it. It just tells you the role the Supreme Court now has. And this is all really the fault of the left, that they wanted to make the Supreme Court the new kind of legislator to legislate laws that they can't get through Congress. That's exactly what the left thinks of the Supreme Court, and not just where you interpret a law to be constitutional or not. That's pretty much their only role. The Supreme Court was supposed to be a very, very weak branch of government. It was supposed to be just some people on the bench reading a new legislation saying, yeah, that's constitutional. Here you go. That's pretty much what the role is supposed to be. It's not supposed to be this monarchy over us who basically decides the rules of the land. That's not their role. That's not supposed to be their role. And I'm sorry, because we don't really elect them too. They're picked. So the whole reaction it doesn't make sense whatsoever. But because now President Trump is set to pick, now their new line of thinking is that, well, because remember back in 2016, Mitch McConnell made the ruling that you can't pick a Supreme Court nominee, you can't confirm a Supreme Court nominee, or if during a presidential year. But he said that in the context of, if the party in the Senate and the party in the presidency is different, the Senate has no obligation to confirm the SCOTUS in an election year. That's what he actually said. Which, he's right about that. The Senate has no obligation to actually confirm or put a vote on a SCOTUS nominee. They could have, but of course, what Mitch McConnell said was kind of dumb, and he was trying to be very clever in his wording and everything. He should have just come out and rightly said, guys, we don't have the votes to confirm him. We don't want him to be a justice, so we're not gonna vote on him. Simple as that. That's all Mitch McConnell had to say. But now that's kind of created this whole mess now, where it's an election year, and now Democrats are screaming, "You can't confirm someone on an election year. Wait until the next president." But what's kind of weird about that is that, let's just put it this way: if Biden were to win, and if the Senate were to be now controlled by the Democrats, you got to keep in mind that those people won't come into the office until January, for the president, January 20th, and for Congress sometime in January too. So from November 3rd until then, they can still confirm a nominee. The Senate, Republicans, and President Trump will be still in power during that moment, during that time. So unless there's some kind of ruling that I don't know about that forbids that, That's just my assumption that they're still empowered during that small time frame from early November until January, so they can do a lot of things during that time. But again, this is not the only thing they're kind of threatened right here. They're also threatening to pat the court. The many Democrats are threatening to pat the court. Basically, if Joe Biden were to win the presidency and the Democrats gain back the Senate, they'll put a bunch of justices on the Supreme Court, which will shift power of the court to their favor. And which point they can legislate from the bench. That's pretty much their goal. And another one of their ideas now is to add D.C., Washington D.C., and Puerto Rico as states, with the assumption that those states will become Democrats for them, because Democrats really do not like the checks and balances system that we have here in the United States. So they want to try any way possible to overthrow that system. And if that means packing the court or adding some new states, good luck with that. But also, the likelihood of that happening is zero to none, honestly, because I think there's a whole entire process in order to add states. I mean, the packing the court is going to be more simpler for them, so they could really possibly do that. But adding states, for example, that's going to be a lot of work for them to do, and given what the Democrats usually do, that's probably not going to happen at all. But again, as we've seen over and over, Democrats are now actually threatening to impeach Trump over this. Impeach him for doing his constitutional duty, which doesn't make sense. I mean, come on. How does that? I'm trying to wrap my mind around that. Thinking you got a president who's doing the constitutional duty of picking a SCOTUS nominee and having the Senate confirm them. That is their power. That's their job in the Constitution, in Article 2 of the Constitution. And you're actually going to impeach him over that? Pelosi? Really? So here's Nancy Pelosi basically talking about that over on with George Stephanopoulos on ABC. And here's what that video sounded like.
You said you want people to get out there and vote, but even that's no guarantee that the White House and Senate Republicans won't try to push through a Supreme Court nomination in a lame duck session, even if Joe Biden wins on November 3rd, even if Democrats pick up seats in the House and maybe even the Senate. So what can you do then? Some have mentioned the possibility, if they try to push through a nominee in a lame duck session, that you and the House could move to impeach President Trump or Attorney General Barr as a way of stalling and preventing the Senate from acting on this nomination.
Well, we have our options. We have arrows in our quiver that I'm not about to discuss right now. But the fact is, we have a big challenge in our country. This president has threatened to not even accept the results of the election with statements that he and his henchmen have made. So right now, our main goal, and I think Ruth Bader Ginsburg would want that would be to protect the integrity of the election as we protect the American people from the coronavirus. And I have faith in the American people on this Sunday morning. I hope and pray we have a vaccine and that it will be soon, but it must be safe and efficacious when we do, not one day sooner, not one day later than that. But the fact is, this administration has been a total failure in protecting the health and well-being of the American people, and it has had an impact on our economy. The lives, the livelihood, and the life of our democracy are threatened by this administration. So again, when people say, what can I do? You can vote, you can get out the vote, and you can do so as soon as possible. 10 states, as I said, on Friday started their early voting the day that we lost Ruth Bader Ginsburg.
But to be clear, you're not taking any arrows out of your quiver. You're not ruling anything out. Good morning. Sunday morning.
We have a responsibility. We take an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. We have a responsibility to meet the needs of the American people. When we weigh the equities, protecting our democracy requires us to use every arrow in our quiver.
Okay, I'm sorry. That good morning, happy Sunday or whatever, Sunday morning. I mean, what in the world was that right there? I'm guessing it's some kind of teleprompter issue or something. But the look of George Stephanopoulos' face during the movie was like priceless. Like he was like, "What in the world just happened?" Okay, but in all seriousness, what she's saying is just total crap. Of like they have their arrows in our quiver, and whatever that means. So they're gonna have options, and try to stall this thing and probably trash and attack whoever is the nominee. So that'll be very interesting. And her whole comment about how, the economy's bad and your livelihood and your work and all that is all threatened by this administration. No, it's threatened by people like Nancy Pelosi, who issued and encouraged the lockdowns, which put millions of people out of work. That's nothing to do with President Trump. Nothing. He didn't lock down the country. He gave the power to the states, but he didn't issue a national lockdown. That's all on these states who did it themselves. And I'm talking about Republican and Democrat states who locked down. And thankfully, there were some states like South Dakota, Florida, Arkansas who didn't lock down, and they're doing perfectly fine. But states like California, New York, all over, they're still locked down, and their economy is horrible. People are out of work and on unemployment, and they refuse to reopen. And they had the audacity to blame President Trump for their failing economy. Come on, people, don't fall for that. Do not fall for that BS right there. And I don't think people are going to fall for that BS any longer, because to see, well, it's the Democrats that are running the states here that are putting us on lockdown. So why am I supposed to be mad at Trump and not you? You run the state. We are a federalist nation. The states and the federal government are supposed to have equal power. And what President Trump did during the first start of the pandemic was correct. He gave the power of the states to do what they thought was best, because you can't treat every state as equal. Like Montana has nobody, and to treat it like Montana as like New York, as same as New York, for example, would not have made any sense whatsoever. So that's why President Trump decided, okay, you states, you decide, and what you think was best. I'll recommend some stuff, but you do what you think is best. And that's exactly what the president of the United States is supposed to do during that moment. Could his rhetoric been different? Of course, his rhetoric could have been way better during that time. But as far as what he actually did, he did the right thing. And because really, name any other president that would have not taken more power during this moment. Any other president would probably gain more. Like for Obama would probably done a national lockdown and took in a lot more power and grew the executive branch. President Trump didn't do that at all. He did exactly what he was supposed to do. And this is the system that Democrats want to destroy because they hate it. They hate having the states decide of their own. They want a central government that's powerful enough to solve and rule over people's lives. They want a complete ruling over the country. They want a ruling over all industry. This is what Democrats want. And that's why when they see the checks and balances system, or the Senate, they want to destroy it. And they say things like, oh, the Democrats are, the Senate is undemocratic. We can't, it's not representative of the people. But that was the point of it. That was the exact point of the Senate. It was not supposed to be, the Senate was not supposed to be representative of the people. It was supposed to be representative of the states. To have states be pretty much equally represented. Because you can't have, because imagine in a system where it was just complete mob rule. That would have been a complete disaster because California and New York would have made all the decisions for us. Every other state in the country would have been just at their mercy. And that's what the founders feared. And that's exactly why they designed the system the way they did. Alright, so I'll continue on with this in just a minute. But first, you got to go over to the YouTuber, The Guy in the Freedom Blog, to check it out. So not only we get the rest of this episode, for its topic as concerned, but also towards the end, you'll get where I go over the book of John. I'm in John chapter 19 right now. I'm gonna pretty soon finish that book, and I'll move on to another book in the Bible. I don't know which one yet. But also, you can get good stuff and bad stuff of the week. And remember, you can find me on your favorite podcast listening sites like Apple Podcasts and Spotify and Google Podcasts. Otherwise, I'll see you next week. This is The Guy in the Freedom Show. Alright, so, yeah, again, they want the system to tear down. I mean, again, they hate the Senate because it's not representative of the people. Again, we're now a democracy, so let's get that out of our heads. We are a constitutional republic. So the states, this is how the founding fathers designed the system for a specific reason, because they hated and didn't want mob rule. And they had every reason to. Because imagine a mob rule effect today. It would be a complete disaster. But the Democrats don't want that. They want a mob rule. They want control. That's why they see people saying, let's abolish the Senate. Let's abolish the Electoral College. It's undemocratic. And there's also this stupid idea that President Trump didn't win the popular vote, therefore it's illegitimate for him to pick a SCOTUS nominee, which is not even in the Constitution or even remotely logical in any sense, but whatever. So, again, they want to tear down the system, and at the same time, they're allowing people to run roughshod over their cities and want to try to blame President Trump for that. Which leads us to the riots, the new refreshed riots happening in cities now. And the reason for this is because of the Breonna Taylor case. And for those who don't kind of remember what exactly happened during with the Breonna Taylor case, so this is according to Courier Journal. It's kind of a rundown of what exactly happened right here. Especially, there was a warrant put out for I believe, Breonna Taylor's boyfriend, or actually Breonna Taylor herself, or one of those two. There's a warrant put out for them, and basically, it was supposed to be a no-knock search warrant that was they were supposed to go over the house and basically arrest them. But the problem is on March 13th, March 13th, when they went out and actually tried to go arrest him, when they got to the place, the house, they try to knock on the door and they identify themselves, the police are here on all that. But when they entered, Breonna Taylor's boyfriend began opening fire on them, on the police, and stated that one of the officers was actually seriously injured. And because of this, the police, of course, fired back at them. And unfortunately, Breonna Taylor was caught in the crossfire during that time. So it's definitely a tragedy of a situation, but nothing criminal actually happened. The police were justified in shooting back, and unfortunately, she was caught in the crossfire. I mean, it's a tragedy, but it was not intended. They were not in there with the intent to kill Breonna Taylor. Now, the media narrative that they want to try to push, they want to try to ignore the facts. They want to try to push a narrative that the police basically entered the apartment without announcing themselves, and basically, Breonna Taylor was sleeping. They went into her room and shot her. That's their narrative. They want to say that she was shot in cold blood in her sleep for no reason whatsoever. That's completely false by all measures. There was a warrant out for one of them, and the boyfriend fired back at them. So now there's a whole kind of indictment to be set upon them, but they weren't indicted for shooting Breonna Taylor. None of them were. At least one of them were indicted for reckless endangerment or something like that, because some of the bullets from their guns hit the neighbor's house or neighbor's bedroom or something like that. But as far as the indictment on Breonna Taylor's killing, nothing, because again, from the facts of the case, it was not criminal intent. It was nothing criminal actually happened. It was a tragedy, but not criminal activity. But at the announcement of the indictment, of course, as always, cities across America erupted into violence. So we had Louisville. Louisville erupted into violence, of course. But here's actually a quick video of this is in Louisville. And it's a U-Haul truck with basically riot equipment in it, which is very strange. But here's the video right here for it. So this kind of makes you wonder who exactly is actually funding this whole thing, who's actually behind giving them the money or resources to do all this. That's another topic for another time. Oops. So, but of course, again, like I said, cities erupt into violence. Here's a little bit of Louisville right here. Thankfully, Louisville wasn't actually as bad. There was some damage to businesses and whatever, like what we see in this video right here. But as far as Louisville as a whole, it wasn't actually hit bad. I'll get that in just a little bit, but here's the video right here for what happened in Louisville. What a delight right there. This is peaceful. This is peaceful, people. This is peaceful protest. But again, like I said, Louisville wasn't actually hit hard because they were prepared for this, actually, because they knew the dam was coming, so they were prepared. The police were prepared for it. So that's good on them. So the violence did actually get horrible in Louisville. It was actually shut down pretty early and just moved to regular protests. But cities like, for example, LA were a little different. So here's a video in the riots in Los Angeles, and basically it's a video of them surrounding a car and trying to attack the driver inside the vehicle. And here's what that looked like right here. So you can see the car being surrounded, and then they drive away. So pretty insane stuff right there. So now, of course, they're doing an entire thing where they think that, oh, see, so when they drove the protesters, this is the work of white supremacists right here. Now, if you surround a car on a highway, on a road, what happens next is on you. Because really, if my truck was surrounded by a bunch of people trying to break in and trying to get to me, I'm going to press on the gas pedal and floor it. I'm not going to let them attack me and actually kill me for whatever reason. So good on this driver too for not falling for that BS right there. So this is just in Los Angeles, and of course places like Portland, where there's the riots. Portland is just a complete disaster at this point. But thankfully, the police were not messing around during this time around. So here's basically the police and some firefighters going through the streets and try to shut down the riots. Here's a little bit what that looked like.
This portion of downtown is closed. From Southwest 14th to NATO, Columbia to Harvey Milk is closed. Move to the west now, past 14th.
So good on them. But unfortunately, I'm actually in Louisville. While I was saying, the riot's going to get as bad, there were some violence, injuries that happened. So 2 officers were shot. In Louisville, I don't think any of them died. They were just seriously injured. But again, this is the issue with this whole thing right here. When you push the narrative that the police are waking up every day looking to kill black people, and that black people are in danger every time they walk out of the house, this is what you get. When you push that narrative, this is what you get. No matter how untrue the narrative is. It's completely insane in what they try to push on this whole thing. And the media continues to play it down. They pretty much ignored the riots happening. And of course, if they mention it, they'll play it down. They'll just play it out. It's mostly peaceful. It's just mostly peaceful. Protests. It doesn't matter if it's mostly peaceful or not. It's still violence. It's still violence happening in these cities. It should not be happening. And so at the same time, when you have these riots and protests, you got thousands of people on the streets protesting or for whatever. And the media says nothing about it. They're perfectly okay with it, saying, oh, this is all for a good cause. All for a good cause right here. They can protest all they want. And they can. They have every right to protest. But this is the same media and the same people who freak out over Christians singing hymns in the church parking lot. Seriously. So here's a video of some Christians who were singing hymns in the church parking lot. They were arrested. This is in Moscow, Idaho. So here's a little bit of that video right here.
Always trust in chariots, and others trust in horses. But we recall our Lord our God, strong past our own resources. Our enemies have fallen low, but we are held and upright. So save us, Lord our God, and King, as we in trouble call thee, as we in trouble call thee.
It's embarrassing. How you doing, Gabe? I'm doing great. Yeah, man, I'm doing great. Over this patrol car here. Didn't see this happen for BLM, Gabe. It's unbelievable. Isn't that weird?
Hey, just give us a little space, will you, please?
Yeah,
just give us a little space.
You got it. You guys should not be doing this and doing this kind of crap for the mayor. This is embarrassing. You guys are stronger than this.
Shouldn't be doing this.
Your name, sir? You guys are tough people. This is wrong. You're a cop.
Okay, so basically in the video you see them getting arrested for whatever, for basically saying hymns, and the reason the mayor of Moscow, Idaho gives is that, they weren't socially distancing or wearing masks, whatever. At the same time, massive protests in the streets, and nothing is said. This is because they agree with the narrative that BLM is pushing. They completely agree with it. And if they don't, then they know they will get attacked and trashed for it. So which leads us to our next topic I want to really talk about and home in on for this episode. So there's a lot of kind of, like I said in the past before, there's almost a kind of a religiosity happening with BLM, and I coined the term for it. It's called wokeanity. That's what I chose to call it, because it's religious, pagan religion in nature. But some of these people want to hide behind kind of the gospel and try to play themselves off as Christians, but their theology is completely and utterly false by every measure. So before I get to that, I want to kind of go over a quick kind of, this is a book by John MacArthur, who is the pastor over at Grace Community Church in Los Angeles, California. He wrote a book called Fool's Gold. And basically, kind of the outline of it, kind of a story he tells in it. And by the way, kind of the inspiration of how I'm starting to talk, why I'm talking about this, it comes from a podcast called the Just Thinking Podcast, hosted by Virgil Walker and Darrell Harrison. It's a really great podcast. Check them out, because they do a lot of great stuff right there, and they hone in, and it's all from a biblical perspective, their beliefs. It's just a really great podcast. But the sources that kind of bringing up here is kind of coming from them, including this Fool's Gold book. So basically kind of the outline, the kind of story MacArthur tells in this book is basically go back to the miners in California when they were digging for gold. And, they're digging all day and night trying to find this gold and everything to basically enrich themselves. And every once in a while they find what looks like gold, something that looks like gold, but it's not actually gold. It's a completely different metal. And there's a difference, you can tell kind of the difference between, is this gold or is this gold? And you kind of, if you crack open the thing that looks like gold but isn't, you can tell, because it looks different inside than what actual gold looks like. And the same thing applies to the gospel. You got many kind of versions of the gospel that are completely false. And then you got the true gospel that when you look into it, it is true. But when you look into these false gospels, it is completely wrong and insidious by all measure. And this includes the black theology gospel. And I know you're probably going to say, I'm just a white guy. How dare I sound off on black theology? Well, first off, I'm on the belief system that race does not matter. I don't care what the color of your skin or my skin is. We're all made in the image of God. That's just fact right there. But at the same time, when you have a group have theology that proclaims to be the gospel, but is not, we have the responsibility to correct it and go against it and tell the actual truth, like what Uncle Ben would say.
With great power comes great
responsibility. We have a responsibility to do that. We have every responsibility to do that. But And to kind of give you kind of a tone in of what the Black theology liberation is, here's kind of an excerpt from a book right here. It's called Preaching Black Lives Matter, and it's by, sorry, hold on, my computer is being dumb. I'll be right back. All right, sorry, I figured out the issue right here. But again, this is an excerpt from a book. It's called Preaching Black Lives Matter, and by someone named Gail Fisher Stewart. And here's what this author put in one of the pages of the book. For the church to reflect Jesus, there must be a white metanoia, a white repentance, because the shame of slavery is not ours. It is the sole property of white people. Colonization has taught us to bear the shame of something that was done to us, opposed to putting it squarely in the laps of those who denied us humanity, in and out of the church. So a few problems with this. First of all, the shame of slavery, it's not just put on, should not just put on white people. So their claim is that slavery is all a white people thing, and they had no responsibility, nothing to do with it. That's completely false right there, because in Africa, they owned slaves. They owned Africans, they enslaved their own people. Slavery is something that is transracial. It happens in all races, and it's happened on all races. Not just white people enslaving black people. That's not the only thing that happened. Alright, so the whole thing about, for, us to be a white repentance, is completely nonsense and completely and utterly counter to what the gospel is. We're not supposed to, because really, again, race does not matter. Jesus did not come for a certain race. He came from all of us to free all of us from sin. So the whole idea that we must repent of our whiteness, that's completely pagan. That's called pagan nonsense. Nothing to do with the gospel whatsoever. So this is just an idea of what the Black theology liberation is right here. So it really started with someone named James Cone back in the 1960s. And basically his idea is that with Black theology is that, Jesus came as a great liberator of people who were oppressed. And they came to, and the people in his idea who are oppressed are black people. So Jesus came for blacks. And so it's all complete nonsense. Again, here's kind of a smaller explanation of what Cone believes in. So Dwight Hopkins, this is NPR, according to NPR right here. Dwight Hopkins, a professor of the University of Chicago Divinity School, says Black liberation theology often portrays Jesus as a brown-skinned revolutionary. He cites the words of Mary and the Magnificent, also known as the Song of Mary, in which she says God intends to bring down the mighty and to raise the lowly. Hopkins also notes that in the book of Matthew, Jesus says the path to heaven is to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, and visit the sick and the prisoners. I'll get to that in just a second. And the central text for Black liberation theology can be found in chapter 4 of Luke's Gospel, where Jesus outlines the purpose of his ministry. Jesus says, "My mission is to eradicate poverty, and to bring about freedom and bring about freedom and liberation for the oppressed." Hopkins says, and most Christian pastors in America skip over that part of the book. So, okay, let's actually go to Luke chapter 4 right here. Let's see what it says. So we're going to start with verse 14 right here. This is when Jesus is rejected in Nazareth. Then Jesus returned to Galilee, filled with the Holy Spirit's power. Reports about him spread quickly through the whole region. He taught regularly in their synagogues and was praised by everyone. When he came to the village of Nazareth, his boyhood home, he went as usual to the synagogue on the Sabbath and stood up to read scriptures. The scroll of Isaiah, the prophet who was handed the scroll of, can't read right now. The scroll of Isaiah, the prophet, was handed to him. He unrolled the scroll and found the place where this was written. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me, for he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has sent me to proclaim captives will be released, and the blind will see, and that the oppressed will be set free. And the time of the Lord's favor has come. He rolled up the scroll, handed it back to the attendant, and sat down. All eyes in the synagogue looked at him intently. Then he began to speak to them. The scripture you just heard has been fulfilled this very day. So, okay, so kind of go over back to what he said in the scroll of Isaiah. Kind of, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, for he has anointed me to bring good news to the poor. He has proclaimed that captives will be released, that the blind will see, and the oppressed will be set free. Now, this is the essential tenet for the Black liberation theology, is that, Jesus came for the oppressed and set the captives free. Which is true. It is completely true. But, and a big but, the definition of oppressed and captives that they are saying is completely different than the definition of oppressed, than meaning oppressed than what Jesus was talking about. So kind of let's go over what oppressed means real quick, the kind of quick definition of it. So basically, again, oppress is, subject to harsh and authoritarian treatment or whatever. So you're under a rule of some sorts, something else. But when when these folks talk about oppression, they're talking about another race ruling over their race, the white people ruling over black people. But when Jesus talked about oppressed, he wasn't just talking about people who were, as we would think of it, oppressed by other people. Jesus came for them, of course, but he came for also people like Nicodemus, who was part of the Pharisees, the Roman centurion, Matthew, who was the tax collector. But he would probably be considered a oppressor because he took money from the people of Israel. So when you put that into notion, it would be clear that Jesus is when he uses oppressed is completely different than what we think of oppressed. When he says oppressed, he means that we all of us, no matter what race we are, what our income is, we are all oppressed by sin. All of us. And that's exactly why he came here, is to free us from sin. We are captives to sin, we are enslaved to sin, and he came to free us. So Jesus didn't come just for one race and to be kind of a brown skin revolutionary, as it says here. And then the whole idea of Matthew, in the book of Matthew, when it says, when Hopkins notes, and when notes it, is that Jesus says the pathway to heaven is to feed the hungry, clothe the naked, and visit the sick and the prisoners. Because that's all good things to do, but that's not the pathway to heaven. That's not the pathway to eternal life at all. Jesus said that that He is the way, the truth, and the life, and that no one can come to the Father except through Him. And as it says in John chapter 3, verse 16, for God so loved the world, that He gave His only Son, that whoever believes in Him shall not perish but have eternal life. So that tells you that their notion of what gives you to heaven is completely counter to what Jesus actually says to get you to eternal life. Completely counterproductive. And kind of the main focus of the black theology, liberation theology, is that, Jesus was black. He was a black Jesus. He came to, because he came to free the oppressed, that means he was black. First of all, it doesn't matter what color of skin he was. Again, your race does not matter. But that's not the most important aspect of who he is. What matters is that he was the son of the living God, God incarnate. He came to free us from sin, and died on the cross and resurrected. His skin tone does not matter. But the problem with the black liberation theology is that they want to make it matter. They want to make that important part of Jesus. And it's simply not. It's simply not. And it's frustrating to see so many people fall for it. So many people in the church fall for this, saying, oh, yes, I guess that's true. And that's why you have so many of these, so many videos of basically white people kneeling before blacks, asking for forgiveness for whiteness. That is pagan nonsense. That is not anywhere close to what the gospel represented. That's not what Jesus came to do. That's pagan. That's evil right there in nature. You can't go and ask. Okay, you're not supposed. Okay, sorry. I'm start over. It just does. Where am I going with this? Sorry. Okay. When you sit there and try to repent of the sins of something you didn't do, for slavery and whiteness, whatever, for racism, and even if you're not a racist, that is just complete crap. I'm sorry. My throat likes to get really tickly during these episodes. It is so, yeah, it's frustrating to see so many people fall for it. And again, that going back to the fool's gold, it may look like the good thing, it may look like gold, but it's not gold. And the only way to tell is to crack it open and look at the inside of it. And if it doesn't look like gold inside, that means it's not gold. It simply isn't. And again, I know people are probably going to say, oh, you're white, you can't sign off on this. Again, it's responsibility of followers of Christ to call out false gospels like this. And to spread the actual gospel, and that is that Jesus came to earth, is born in the flesh, God incarnate, to free us from the captivity of sin, not the captivity of people, world over people, the captivity of sin. That's exactly what He came to earth to do. So, and I hope people soon realize that, because there's a lot of false gospels out there that claim to be it, but it's not. But again, it's really frustrating to see people fall for it. Alright, so now let's move on to the book of John, John chapter 19, right here. So we're going to be going from verses 17 through 227. This is the crucifixion of Jesus. And remember, you can follow me along if you want, and I'll be in the New Living Translation. So they took Jesus away, carrying the cross by himself. He went to the place called Place of the Skull, in Hebrew, Golgotha. There they nailed him to the cross. 2 others were crucified with him, one on either side, with Jesus between them. And Pilate posted a sign on the cross that read, Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews. The place where Jesus was crucified was near the city, and the sign was written in Hebrew, Latin, and Greek, so that many people could read it. Then the leading priests objected and said to Pilate, change it from King of the Jews to, he said, I am the King of the Jews. Pilate replied, no, what I have written, I have written. When the soldiers had crucified Jesus, they divided his clothes among the 4 of them. They also took his robe, but it was seamless, woven in one piece from top to bottom. So they said, rather than tearing it apart, let's throw dice for it. This fulfilled the scripture, so that says, they divided my garments among themselves and threw dust for my clothing. So that is what they did. Standing near the cross were Jesus' mother, his mother's sister Mary, the wife of Clopas, and Mary Magdalene. When Jesus saw his mother standing there beside the disciple he loved, which was John, he said to her, dear woman, here is your son. And he said to this disciple, here is your mother. And from then on, this disciple took her into his home. So basically, John had Mary with him. Alrighty. So I'm going to stop there for now, and we're going to continue on next week with kind of fishing off, not really fishing off John chapter, but actually fishing off John chapter 19. Was very interesting again. That's one not before. It's kind of Pilate's reaction to Jesus right here, where he actually put on the sign, the King of the Jews. But then, when some of the leading priests said, he said he was the King of the Jews. And then Pilate said, no, this is what I said. I'm going to keep it. Which is very interesting. Very interesting. It's kind of, I don't know. It just, Pilate's character is very interesting in this movie right here. Alright, so now let's get on to the good stuff and bad stuff of the week. So some good stuff of the week. This was great right here. So Dan Crenshaw, who was a representative in Texas, he put out an ad for his election campaign, and let's just say it's one of the best ads I've ever seen. So here's a little bit. It's actually the ad right here. Here's the video right here.
Your mission, should you choose to accept it, will be to save Texas. To do so, you must recruit an exceptional team of congressional candidates. They must be courageous, patriotic, and absolutely fearless. Time is of the essence. The nation's future is dependent upon your success.
You still know how to fly one of these things?
Dan Crenshaw.
I'm putting a team together, Wesley. You in?
You know I wouldn't miss this for the world, right? Wait. I think August is going to want to come too.
You guys looking for a real pilot? Let me get cleaned up.
You're an F-22 pilot. What were you doing working under a helicopter?
I have no idea what I was doing, but typical Air Force fixing the Army's problems.
This guy, Dan, bro, you could have just texted me, man. Why you gotta jump out of an airplane instead of way
because
easier?
It's cooler to jump. Never mind.
And I want to thank these officers for a job well done.
Hey, Beth, when you're finished over there, Texas could use your help.
What the?
Hey, Tony, Texas has a better use for your talents.
Hey guys, who's next?
No.
I got this.
Okay, that is just some cool stuff right there. That's like probably the greatest ad someone has ever put out right there. So yeah, that was just awesome right there. Really well produced and very creative in terms of ads right there. All right, so I think I'm gonna skip the best of the week. So I'll be back here next week with all of the latest. My name is Sean Clinton, and this is the God and Freedom Show. If you enjoyed this episode of the God and Freedom Show, hit that like button and follow the page to get more content. You can also find me on your favorite podcast listening sites like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SoundCloud. Thank you for listening or watching.